You're tuned in to the Reality Fred podcast. Food and travel, cool stuff, weird stuff, entertainment, and more. You made the choice to be here, and my friend, you've chosen wisely. Now buckle up, because it's time to get started. It's time for the Reality Fred podcast.
All right, welcome back, Reality Fred podcast followers. Today we have another awesome and very fun episode. We are going back to Scotland here again, and this time we're going to have some fun. We're going to do, basically, this is going to be a little bit of history, some Scottish history, a little bit of geography, and it'll be an edible tour as well. So I got two Scottish buddies here with me tonight, and so basically this episode we're calling what do we call it? Three Scots with Scotch. Slapstick Scotch. So we're gonna have some fun, but it's all about Scotland and Scotch. So what we're gonna do first, as I said, we're all Scottish. We all have our Scottish background, so we're actually gonna kick things off. We're gonna let Dan the Man Galbraith here start us off. So Dan Galbraith, and I tell you what, when I visited Scotland, all over the place, Galbraith. Everywhere you went, every sign. They were really big into real estate.
We owned that place.
They were like realtors. Everything that was for sale was by Galbraith Realty. But so Dan, tell us what you know a little bit about your Scottish heritage, your Galbraith background.
Well, I'm not sure I know a whole lot, but what I do know is, back in the day, the Galbraiths did fight for Robert the Bruce. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of proud of that. We owned a lot of land over there, and apparently we squandered a lot of land over there. There's a Cull Creek Castle, which is the Galbraith Castle over in Scotland. Yeah, we don't own that anymore.
Oh.
But they do let us stay there.
Okay.
My brother went over and visited. Stayed there. They were the only people there, and the chef made them anything they wanted and took them on personal tours.
Oh, very nice.
So, yeah.
Huh? Very
and then they
interesting.
kicked us out.
Well, it's that Galbraith legacy.
It happens. They're running out of Scotch. So.
You've been kicked out of better places.
This is true.
So now
that's another podcast.
So next we'll move to Doug Coman. And Doug's got an interesting story that he's shared with me a few times, so it'll be fun to let him share. So Doug Coman, go ahead and tell us a little bit about the Coman background.
So depending on how much Scotch we sample here tonight, Mr. Galbraith and I might come to blows because...
Why is that?
Because the Coman clan was in line for the throne of Scotland until Robert the Bruce murdered John the Red Coman and assured his ascent to the throne. So, yeah, the Comans used to own castles and land all over Scotland. They should have been featured in the movie Braveheart, but fortunately, the makers of that film did not do their research, because the great scene where a couple of the Scottish clans abandon William Wallace and leave him on the battlefield, one of those was actually John Comyn and part of the Comyn clan in history. And so they were no friends of the Bruces, and they ended up being run out of Scotland several generations later after Robert the Bruce ascended the throne. My grandfather was actually in a little shop trying to buy a necktie with the family tartan some years ago, and the old shopkeeper looked up over his glasses and said, "There's shame attached to that name, you know." So they haven't forgotten it to this day.
No, they hang on to it. Now, there's a little bit of a interesting, the death story. So, when they ended
the actual gory details?
Oh, yeah, that's the best part of the story. So that's what people are tuning in to hear.
So John the Red Coman had agreed to a meeting with Robert the Bruce, ostensibly to talk about coming to some sort of an agreement, and they went into a little monastery or church, and things got a little heated, and it was at that point that Robert the Bruce produced a dagger and stabbed John Comyn. When he left the cathedral and went back to his posse, he said, "I think I've killed the Comyn." And one of his compadres said, "Il mak sicker," which means "I'll make sure," and went in and stabbed him like 11 more times
Just
and made sure,
make sure.
the deed was done. Yes.
Just 11.
Just 11. Yeah.
Okay.
There's an even dozen at the end.
Very interesting. So, real quick, the Finley background. The Finley is part of the Farquharson clan. It looks like it's spelled Farquharson, but when I went over to Scotland, they pronounced it Farquharson clan. And there is a castle. It's called Braemar Castle, about an hour south of the Speyside area. And I went and visited the castle and toured the castle and everything like that. And it's kind of neat to be part of a clan that still has, an existing castle that you can tour and still maintain. But what I learned about is essentially the castle was actually originally built to keep the Farquharsons out of the area. So it wasn't even originally the Farquharson Castle. It was built to keep the Farquharsons away. And there was a war, and the leader of the clan who had that castle ended up going to prison. And when that happened, the Farquharson clan leader just came in and bought the castle. So, it kind of went up for sale, and so now the Farquharsons have it. But and then what's really neat, when I was young and looking into the background of the Finley name, I had read this, and it was just kind of neat to see it over there in Scotland. But my name is spelled F-I-N-D, with D as in dog, L-E-Y. Now, the original spelling of Finley never has a D. It's F-I-N-L-A-Y. But over there in Scotland, right where the Braemar Castle is, it's right along a river called the Dee River, the D-E-E River. And the Finlays, who lived by the Dee River, started putting a D in their last name so that you knew that they were the Finleys from over by the Dee River. So when we were there and went to go see the castle, I got to drive over the bridge on the Dee River there, which was kind of neat. So that's my little Scottish background story. No stabbings or anything like that.
I'll give it a solid D.
A solid D. So now that that's out of the way, now that we've proved ourselves, we're going to take what we're going to do today is we're going to take a little virtual tour. We're going to start all the way up in the extreme highlands of Scotland. We're going to come all the way down south, down around the Glasgow area, over to the islands, and then we're going to end our virtual tour up at the Isle of Skye. And this is real serious stuff here. Hardcore learning that we're about to take on. We're going to learn about some very unique and interesting towns that we've just randomly selected, these towns all over Scotland. So first, Dan is going to start us off in the interesting town of Kirkwall, which you said earlier was one of your favorite towns, Kirkwall.
Oh, I can't wait to learn what I'm going to teach you. Yes.
So, Dan, tell us a little bit about Kirkwall.
Well, let me tell you about Kirkwall. It is it's mentioned, I don't know whatever that name is, but it's the largest town and the capital of Orkney Islands in Scotland, which is the really cool thing about Kirkwall is the Earl of Orkney, which is the island in Scotland. He was killed by his uncle, Thorfinn the Mighty, in 1486. So that's a cool. There's a lot of bloodshed in the history of Scotland. So I guess you killed for what you got.
Anything else interesting about Kirkwall?
Well, it has one of my favorite distilleries in Kirkwall, Highland Park.
Oh,
and it looks from Pittsburgh.
And it looks like
they have a fine zoo there too, lad.
And it looks like you have some Highland Park here.
I do
what
have
a
Highland
coincidence!
Park right here. This is aged 12 years. It's obviously a single malt. So let me take a sniff and a snort, and I'll tell you what I think.
Yeah, tell us what you think about the Highland Park 12.
I think it likes me. It's a very smooth, just a hint of peat in this Scotch, but it's a very, very smooth Scotch. I do like the taste of that. Some nice subtle aftertaste.
Yep.
I don't know what I'm tasting.
It's one of those. I mean, when you talk now, this is the extreme. This is you talk about the Highlands of Scotland. This is like the Highlands of the Highlands. This is how extreme north Kirkwall is in Highland Park. The Highland Park name actually has nothing to do with the fact that it's in the Highlands. I forget what it actually has to do with, but it has to do with some other Highland park that's nearby or something. I think it's the name of a park or something. I know I butchered that. But very interesting, Dan. Thanks for that education. I didn't know you knew so much about Kirkwall.
Oh, yeah. They tore down a mall and put in a parking lot.
Yeah, okay. So, next on the tour, we're heading to Rothshire. And that's actually a town that Doug knows a lot about. So Doug's going to tell us a little bit about Rothshire.
Oh, Fred, I could go on and on in droning detail if you would like me to. It's
Everything's in order.
Rothshire is actually a historic county in the Scottish Highlands. So if anybody remembers the great show The Highlander,
Oh, yeah.
right, they probably spent some time in Rothshire. There's lots of enclaves throughout these Highland areas, including Inverness Shire, which is actually where one of the remaining ruins of one of the Comyn clan castles is actually in Inverness.
Oh, yeah. Near Loch Ness.
Yes, not far from Loch Ness. And I think it's Lochindoor Castle, actually. It's built on an island. It's very formidable. So, yeah, they have a distillery that's probably more familiar to lovers of great Scotch called Glenmorangie.
Ooh.
Made in the Highland Distillery.
Do you have some?
I actually do. Glenmorangie is one of my absolute favorite brands of Scotch. They have some wonderful varieties, including Nectar d'Or, which is one of my absolute favorites. This is the Glenmorangie.
Just the original, the regular.
The original Glenmorangie.
Just the standard Glenmorangie.
It was actually perfected by the 16 Men of Tain.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes. There were originally 8 of them.
Uh-huh.
And they called them octane.
Oh, jeez.
And now there are 16, so it's double the octane.
All right, well, tell us a little bit. What do you think about the Glenmorangie there, since you happen to have it?
It's quite lovely. It's a very smooth Scotch. It's not at all peaty or earthy. It's very smooth. Really coats the tongue and gives you a nice taste. It doesn't bite at all. It just goes down very very easily.
Well, that's lovely to hear. Well, do you mind if I move our travelers on to our next stop on the tour?
I don't mind at all. That'll give me more time to finish this glass.
All right, enjoy. So the next stop on our virtual tour here is Alness. So we're going to head to Alness, which is one of my favorite towns. You know, Doug, I wanted to mention a little trivia fact here. You were talking about Inverness. Inverness, I believe, has an airport, little airport, and it's not far from Loch Ness. And to get more people to tour that area and use the airport, my man Steve Feltham, who is the Nessie hunter over there, is leading the charge to change the name of the airport from Inverness Airport to Inverness Loch Ness Airport to associate it more, of course, with the Loch Ness Monster and promote the airport. So, moving along, still not far from Loch Ness and Inverness here. We're getting a little bit closer to Loch Ness as we go just a little bit south from Rothshire, just a little south to Alness. Now, the reason I love this town is that in much of the 90s and the early 2000s, Alness regularly entered and won a lot of flower competitions.
That's fascinating, Fred. Tell us more.
Such as the Scotland in Bloom and Britain in Bloom flower competition.
It's blooming brilliant.
Yeah, so they're really into their flowers. And, which probably has a lot to do with the fact that they make such beautiful bouquet of whiskey.
Oh, I see what you did there.
I tied it. I brought it all together.
Nice
so,
segue.
Nicely played.
One of my favorite distilleries happens to be in Alness by coincidence. It is a coincidence. Every time we talk about one of these towns, there's a nearby distillery we like. Huh. But Dalmore is one of my favorite scotches, favorite distilleries. It's under the White and Mackay brand, led by the esteemed, a.k.a. The Nose, a.k.a. Richard Patterson. So I have a little bit of Dalmore 12 here, which is their starting line. I do know a little trivia about this. This is 9 years aged in a bourbon barrel. So it spends its first 9 years aged in a bourbon barrel, and then the